The small shooting range was unusually quiet that morning. A few early visitors were scattered around, checking their guns and practicing careful aim. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air, mixed with the faint scent of metal and morning dew. No one expected anything unusual that day, at least not until a quiet woman walked through the entrance. Her name was Maya. She moved with a calm, measured pace, her dark eyes scanning the range with careful curiosity. She was tall, her posture straight, but there was nothing flashy about her appearance. She wore simple clothes, a black jacket, jeans, and boots that were sturdy but plain. Most people glanced at her and immediately dismissed her as just another visitor, harmless and unremarkable. As Maya approached the counter to register, a group of regulars whispered to each other, barely hiding their smirks. "Look at her," one of them said under his breath. "She probably doesn't even know how to hold a gun properly." Another laughed quietly. Their voices were low, but Maya could hear the faint mocking tone. She ignored them entirely, not even offering a glance in their direction. Her attention was on the shooting lanes, on the guns, on the possibilities. There was an air about her that seemed calm, almost fragile, yet beneath that calmness lay something nobody could guess. After completing her registration, Maya walked toward an empty shooting lane. The wooden floors creaked slightly beneath her boots, but she did not hurry. Every movement was deliberate. People continued to watch her from the corners of their eyes, whispering and chuckling. "She's going to embarrass herself," someone muttered. Another voice said, "I bet she's never even touched a gun before." The mocking tone only grew stronger, and a few of the younger men at the range decided to make it fun. They started placing small bets, laughing among themselves, predicting just how badly she would fail. Maya picked up a standard handgun from the rack. Her fingers traced the metal lightly, almost reverently. She checked the gun's balance, the weight, the feel of the grip. To anyone watching, it might have looked like she was fumbling, hesitating. But in truth, every tiny adjustment she made was precise, intentional, and full of quiet confidence. The observers' laughter grew louder as they whispered, "She looks so unsure, and come on, she's never going to hit the target." None of them realized how wrong they were. She positioned herself at the lane, her back straight and shoulders relaxed. The other shooters around her were talking, joking, showing off, trying to distract her. A few even muttered insults, thinking it would shake her focus. "Do you need help?" one man sneered. "This isn't a place for beginners." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her calmness was unnerving, and it made the people around her impatient. The anticipation built. Everyone wanted to see a show, but what they didn't know was that Maya's quiet demeanor hid a level of skill none of them could imagine. When she finally raised the gun, her eyes narrowed slightly, focusing on the target down the range. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and let the first bullet fly. The sound of the shot echoed through the range, sharp and precise. The bullet hit the very center of the target. There was a brief pause, a split second of silence, and then the group around her froze. Nobody expected it. Some stared in disbelief, mouths slightly open. Others shook their heads, thinking it must have been luck. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "How?" Maya didn't flinch. She didn't smile or gloat. She simply reloaded, adjusted her stance slightly, and took another shot. Again, the bullet hit the center. Another pause. The group's whispering grew louder, confusion mixing with awe. The same man who had mocked her before whispered under his breath, almost to himself, I didn't see that coming." It was clear now that Maya was not an ordinary shooter. There was something different about her, something the onlookers couldn't identify yet. As she continued, it became obvious that every shot she fired landed exactly where she intended. The mocking laughter had vanished. In its place was a tense silence, punctuated by the occasional nervous whisper. "Who is she?" one of the men asked. But nobody had an answer. Maya remained focused, her calm energy dominating the range, and the others began to feel a strange mix of intimidation and curiosity. There was a story behind her, but nobody could guess what it was. Suddenly, one of the regulars decided to challenge her. He walked up, smirking, holding his gun confidently. "All right, let's see if you can really do this," he said, voice loud enough for the group to hear. "Think you can beat me?" Maya looked at him briefly. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silent look in her eyes was enough to make him pause, a slight unease creeping into his confidence. He had expected someone weak, unsure, easy to intimidate. What he didn't expect was the quiet strength he now saw in her gaze. The challenge began. The man fired first, taking aim aggressively, trying to show off. His bullets scattered slightly, none perfectly centered. Maya watched carefully, analyzing every movement. Then it was her turn. She raised her gun with precision, aimed, and fired. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, all perfect, all hitting the target's dead center. A murmur ran through the group. Some of the more experienced shooters were visibly shaken. She's incredible," one whispered. Others were too stunned to speak. Maya's calmness never faltered. The man who challenged her lowered his gun slightly, realizing he had underestimated her. His confidence had vanished, replaced by a mix of shock and respect. The other onlookers now looked at her with a mixture of admiration and fear. Something about her skill, her silence, her focused demeanor, told them this was no ordinary visitor. There was history in her hands, in her stance, in the way she breathed. She was a master, and they had only just begun to understand it. As the tension in the range grew, Maya reloaded again, preparing for the next round. The whispers turned into nervous conversations. Some began to speculate, had she served in the military? Was she a trained marksman? Theories flew around the room, none certain, none able to explain the quiet power they had just witnessed. Maya's focus never wavered. She moved slowly, methodically, each motion precise, almost ritualistic. Every detail mattered, and she handled the gun as if it were an extension of her own body. Then, unexpectedly, a young man approached her with a smirk, trying to provoke her further. "Come on, this is just a hobby for you, right? Or are you secretly some kind of soldier or spy?" Maya looked at him briefly, and for the first time, a small, calm smile crossed her face. It was not a smile of arrogance, but of quiet confidence. She did not answer verbally. She didn't have to. Her next actions would speak for her. She picked up a different gun, one more challenging, with a heavier recoil. The young man, and others watching, laughed quietly, thinking she would struggle. But once again, Maya's skill was unmatched. She fired with incredible precision, each shot hitting the exact spot she aimed for. The room went silent again. People leaned forward, eyes wide, mouths slightly open, realizing that the quiet woman they had mocked was not only skilled but exceptional. The tension was thick. Nobody dared make another joke or challenge. They had learned, too late, that appearances could be deceiving. Maya finished her session quietly, lowering the gun and placing it back on the rack. She did not celebrate. She did not demand attention. She simply collected her belongings, adjusted her jacket, and walked toward the exit. The others watched her leave, whispering among themselves. Who is she? Where did she learn to shoot like that? I can't believe it. Their disbelief mixed with admiration, and a sense of unfinished curiosity lingered. Maya had entered the range quietly, and she had left with everyone questioning what they thought they knew. As she stepped outside into the morning sunlight, Maya paused briefly, looking back at the range. She did not smile, she did not wave, she simply observed. Something about her demeanor suggested she had more stories, more skills, and perhaps more secrets yet to be revealed. For the people left inside, that quiet glance was enough to leave them with a lingering question: who exactly was this woman, and what was she capable of? The day had started normally, but Maya had changed everything, leaving suspense in her wake, and the certainty that her story had only just begun. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the quiet shooting range. Maya had returned the previous day, but today felt different. There was a tension in the air, almost like the range itself sensed something was about to change. She arrived early, just as a few familiar faces were setting up their equipment. The same group that had mocked her yesterday was already there, their whispers hushed as they noticed her approaching. They had not forgotten the way she had effortlessly dominated every target, and though they tried to hide it, a trace of fear and respect lingered in their eyes. Maya moved toward her usual lane with calm steps. Every motion she made drew subtle attention, yet she did not seek it. She simply prepared, checking her equipment with careful precision. Her focus was complete, a quiet intensity that seemed almost unnatural to those watching. It was not arrogance, they could not explain it, but a sense of purpose radiated from her. The men who had mocked her yesterday shifted uncomfortably, uncertain whether to challenge her again or to keep their distance. As she began setting up, a man named Blake, known among the regulars as the most competitive shooter, stepped forward. Blake was tall, muscular, and brimming with confidence. He had been humiliated by Maya's skill the previous day, and he was determined not to let it happen again. "All right," he said loudly, voice carrying across the range, "let's see if yesterday was just a lucky day. Today, I want a real challenge." The other shooters leaned in, sensing that something big was about to unfold. They all knew Blake was capable, but they also remembered Maya's deadly precision. Maya looked at him calmly. She did not speak. Her silence was not rudeness, it was a warning. Blake laughed nervously, interpreting her quietness as hesitation. "Don't worry," he said with a smirk, "I'll go easy on you." The words were meant to provoke her, to rattle her confidence. Instead, Maya simply nodded slightly, her dark eyes never leaving the target. Her calm composure made Blake fidget, a small crack in his confident facade. The first round began. Blake fired rapidly, trying to impress and intimidate. His bullets scattered, some missing slightly, others hitting the edges of the target. Maya watched him carefully, noting every move, every twitch, every habit. Then it was her turn. She raised her gun, inhaled slowly, and fired. Each shot landed perfectly, in the center of the target, precise and controlled. 1, 2, 3 shots. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Blake's confidence began to falter. "What? How?" he whispered under his breath. He had prepared for this challenge, thinking he could outshine her, but he had underestimated the quiet woman he had mocked. Maya lowered her gun and simply adjusted her stance. There was no arrogance, no satisfaction in her movements, just calm, measured precision. The other shooters were speechless. They watched as Blake raised his gun again, his hands trembling slightly. Maya's silence was powerful, almost magnetic, forcing him to feel the pressure of her presence even before she fired. Another round began, this time with Blake determined to prove himself. His hands shook slightly as he aimed, sweat forming on his brow. Maya, on the other hand, seemed untouchable. Every breath she took, every movement, was controlled, deliberate. She fired once more, and each bullet hit the exact spot she intended. The sound of each shot echoed in the range, punctuating the tension that had built between the two competitors. The other shooters leaned forward, captivated. They had come expecting entertainment, perhaps a fight, but they were witnessing something much more. As the rounds continued, whispers spread through the group. "She's unreal. I've never seen anyone shoot like that. She has to be trained somewhere." Some of the men tried to dismiss it, claiming luck or beginner's mistakes, but deep down, everyone knew this was no ordinary shooter. Maya's calm demeanor, her perfect accuracy, and her unshakable focus were signs of a skill far beyond casual practice. Blake's frustration grew. He had never been challenged like this before, and the quiet intensity of his opponent unnerved him. He could feel a burning need to win, yet every time he fired, Maya's bullets seemed to strike before his own. It was as if she anticipated his every move. The competitive fire that had driven him suddenly collided with the reality that he had never faced anyone like Maya. She was not just good, she was extraordinary. Then, the unexpected happened. A newcomer arrived at the range, a man dressed in black tactical gear, carrying a rifle. His presence was commanding, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. He walked past the crowd, eyes scanning carefully until they landed on Maya. A subtle smile appeared on his face, but it was not friendly. He spoke quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "I see you're the one they've been talking about." Very impressive. Maya did not flinch. She continued to reload, her calm focus unbroken. The tension between them was immediate, silent, and palpable. The other shooters sensed the change. They whispered nervously among themselves. There was something dangerous about the newcomer, something that made even Blake pause. But Maya's eyes met his briefly, and a flash of recognition crossed them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes to those watching closely. The air seemed to crackle with tension as if the range itself had become a stage for something much larger than a simple shooting contest. The newcomer set down a small target, almost as if challenging her silently. Maya approached it without hesitation. Her calm, precise movements were mesmerizing. Every step, every adjustment of her gun, was methodical. She did not speak. She did not react to the whispers or the stares of the onlookers. It was as if time itself had slowed, focusing all attention on her and the task ahead. The suspense built with every heartbeat. She raised her gun and fired. Each bullet struck perfectly, center of the target, with the kind of precision that could only come from intense training and experience. The newcomer nodded slightly, a small, almost imperceptible acknowledgement of her skill. But there was no friendliness in his gesture, it was more like a test, a silent recognition that she was not ordinary. The others in the range stared, their disbelief and awe mixing with a growing sense of unease. Maya's focus never wavered. She continued to fire, and with each shot, the tension grew. The whispers turned into murmurs of respect and fear. People began to realize that this quiet, unassuming woman was not only a master of the gun but perhaps someone with a past that none of them could imagine. Every shot was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. The calm exterior masked a deadly skill that had been honed over years of discipline and experience. Finally, she lowered her gun and turned slowly to face the newcomer. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the room felt frozen. There was a silent understanding between them, a recognition of skill, focus, and perhaps danger. Maya did not speak, but the message was clear, she was not to be underestimated. The others could only watch, realizing that the quiet woman they had mocked was far more than they had imagined. As the session ended, Maya collected her things, her movements still calm and deliberate. She walked past the crowd, leaving a lingering sense of awe and tension. Even Blake, who had challenged her, now looked at her with a mixture of respect and fear. The whispers followed her out of the range. Questions filled the air. Who was she? Where did she learn to shoot like that? What was her story? Nobody had answers, but one thing was certain, Maya had left an impression that would not be forgotten. Outside, the sunlight caught her jacket as she adjusted it, her eyes scanning the horizon. There was a quiet determination in her gaze, a readiness for whatever came next. The newcomer watched her leave, a shadow of a smile still on his lips. He had seen her skill, and he knew that this was only the beginning. Maya's story was far from over, and the tension she had created at the range was just the first chapter. The real test, the one that would reveal her past and the true depth of her abilities, was still ahead. As she walked down the empty road from the range, the wind brushing against her face, Maya allowed herself a moment to think. She had remained calm under pressure, showcased her skill, and sent a clear message to those who doubted her. But deep inside, she knew that challenges would come, bigger and more dangerous than anyone at the range could imagine. The day had been a display of precision and control, but tomorrow, the stakes would rise. The suspense of her hidden past, her true skill, and the enemies she had yet to face loomed just ahead, waiting to test her once more. Maya disappeared into the quiet streets, leaving the range and its witnesses in stunned silence. The whispers would continue for days, the awe would linger, but the true story of the quiet, deadly sniper was only beginning to unfold. And somewhere, in the shadows, eyes followed her, calculating, waiting for the right moment. The day after the intense challenge at the range, Maya returned early, as if drawn by an invisible force. The air was cooler now, carrying a faint scent of wet earth from the morning rain. A few regular shooters were already present, their casual chatter subdued, eyes constantly flicking toward the quiet woman who had changed the atmosphere of the range. Nobody approached her today with mockery. Even the most arrogant men knew better. Her reputation had quietly grown overnight, and with it, a mixture of fear and curiosity. Maya walked toward her usual lane, her movements smooth and confident. She carried no weapons except the ones provided at the range, yet her posture suggested readiness, as though she were always prepared for a test the world might throw at her. The mysterious man from the previous day, the one dressed in tactical black, had not returned yet, but the thought of him lingered in her mind. She knew he had noticed her skills, and though their brief encounter was silent, it had carried a weight she could not ignore. Something told her this encounter was not over. As she prepared her first shot, a voice called out from behind her. "Maya, wait!" The shooters all turned, surprised to hear her name spoken aloud. A young woman, unfamiliar to the regulars, approached. Her face was tense, and her eyes were serious. "I've been sent to warn you," she said quietly, glancing around nervously. "You don't know the people you're attracting. Some of them, they're dangerous." Maya paused for a moment, studying the girl, her eyes calm yet piercing. She had expected challenges, but not warnings. "Explain," she said simply, her voice steady. The girl stepped closer, lowering her voice even further. "There are people who watch. People who wait for skilled shooters. They noticed you yesterday. Not because of your talent, because of what you could do if provoked. You're not ordinary, and neither is the attention you're drawing." Maya listened carefully. Her face remained impassive, but inside, she felt the first real stirrings of caution. The warnings were not threats, exactly, but they carried weight. Someone was watching her, analyzing her moves, and not for sport. Before Maya could respond, a loud commotion erupted at the far end of the range. One of the male shooters, Blake, had fired several rounds too quickly and accidentally struck a target near another lane. A sharp argument followed, but Maya's attention was already elsewhere. Her eyes scanned the horizon, her instincts kicking in. She had been trained to read situations like this, to detect the subtle hints of danger. The quiet warning from the girl and the disruption at the range were pieces of a puzzle that she was already beginning to assemble. Maya set her gun down for a moment, thinking. She realized the range was no longer just a place to test her skill, it was a stage. Someone, or several someones, were observing her abilities. The notion sent a shiver through the morning air, though her face betrayed nothing. Calm, precise, and measured, she picked up her gun again. Every step she took toward the lane was deliberate. She did not speak, did not rush. Her actions alone commanded attention, and the whispers of the other shooters faded into silence once more. Blake, still red-faced from the earlier mistake, approached her. "Look," he said, voice tight, "I just want to know, how did you get so good?" Maya tilted her head slightly, examining him quietly. "Practice," she said finally, her voice calm. But there was something in her tone that suggested layers of experience far beyond simple practice. Blake frowned. He had thought he understood skill, competition, control, but Maya had redefined all of those notions in the brief span of 2 mornings. He wanted to press further, but he sensed the unspoken warning in her gaze and stepped back. The tension of the day shifted when a series of sharp clicks echoed across the range. They were deliberate, quiet, but unmistakable, an indication that someone had brought a high-powered rifle, setting it up outside the usual lanes. The regular shooters murmured nervously, unsure of what to make of the situation. Maya's eyes narrowed. She had expected observation, but the intention behind these actions was deliberate. Someone was testing her, quietly escalating the stakes. Suddenly, a voice called out, clear and precise. "Maya, we need to see what you're capable of under pressure." The same tactical figure from the previous day appeared, his presence commanding, almost predatory. He carried a clipboard and binoculars, his eyes scanning her movements with intense focus. Maya didn't react outwardly, but inside, her mind began to race through scenarios. This was no casual interest, this was a challenge. A test. And she intended to meet it. The man set a target at the far end of the range, one that required skill, precision, and control under pressure. Maya approached it quietly, her heartbeat steady. She checked the gun, adjusted her stance, and focused. The entire range seemed to hold its breath. Observers leaned forward, sensing the significance of what was about to unfold. Blake and the others watched nervously, aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary and dangerous. Maya fired her first shot. It hit perfectly. The second shot, also perfect. The man in black nodded once, subtle but deliberate, signaling acknowledgement. Each subsequent shot required more focus, more calculation, and each landed exactly as intended. Her precision was remarkable, her calmness unshakable. Observers began to whisper, unsure whether to be impressed or fearful. Some recognized that her skills were beyond competition, they were survival grade. After several rounds, the man in black finally approached. "You have potential," he said quietly. "But potential can be dangerous in the wrong hands. You must understand the stakes of your skill." Maya's eyes met his, her calm focus unwavering. She understood his warning, but she was not intimidated. Instead, a spark of recognition crossed her face. She knew who he was, at least in part, and what he represented. The subtle tension in the air shifted into a charged silence. This was no longer a game. The girl who had warned Maya earlier stepped closer again. "They'll keep watching. They'll keep testing," she said softly. "You must be ready. Not just to compete, but to survive." Maya nodded slightly, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Her quiet demeanor masked an inner storm of awareness and strategy. She had been underestimated before, mocked even, but now the stakes had changed. Observation had become a test, and she was fully aware that every move she made would be scrutinized. As the day wore on, Maya's skill drew both admiration and unease. The range no longer felt like a simple arena for practice, it was a proving ground. Each observer, each whisper, each subtle movement outside the lanes added layers of suspense. She had entered this place quietly, but her presence now commanded attention, respect, and caution. Maya's calm movements, her precise shots, and her unwavering focus created a growing tension among all who watched. By late afternoon, the range had emptied except for Maya, Blake, and the mysterious figure in black. Maya cleaned her gun quietly, her mind racing with thoughts of potential challenges ahead. She knew that her past, her training, and her hidden skills had attracted attention far beyond casual interest. Someone was watching, analyzing, and possibly waiting for the right moment to test her in ways far beyond a shooting range. Before leaving, she glanced back at the targets she had just conquered. Each bullet hole represented more than skill, it was a message. Calm, precise, unflinching, Maya had left no doubt about her abilities. The others could speculate, whisper, and fear, but one thing was certain, she was not an ordinary woman, and the story of her past, her skill, and the challenges she would face had only just begun. As she stepped outside, the evening sun casting long shadows, Maya felt a familiar tension settle over her. She had survived observation and challenge, but she knew the true tests were still ahead. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched, calculations were made, and anticipation grew. Her quiet presence, her deadly precision, and her unshakable calm had made her both respected and feared. The next chapter, she realized, would reveal the full extent of her past and the hidden dangers now waiting for her. The road ahead was uncertain, the stakes higher than any shooting range could offer. Maya walked on, calm, controlled, but fully aware that her next challenge would demand everything she had, and perhaps more. The suspense hung in the air, thick and undeniable, as the quiet, deadly sniper disappeared into the evening, leaving questions and tension behind her, questions that would only be answered in the trials to come. The following morning, Maya awoke before dawn. The city outside was quiet, still wrapped in the gray folds of mist and early fog. Her mind was already moving, planning, calculating, and anticipating. She knew the events at the shooting range were only the beginning. The warning she had received, the silent observation, and the appearance of the mysterious man in black all meant one thing: someone was watching, someone with intent. Maya didn't panic. She didn't rush. Calmness was her tool, precision her weapon. By mid-morning, she returned to the range. Today, it felt different. The usual crowd was smaller, their chatter subdued. Rumors had traveled fast after her previous displays of skill. People were curious, cautious, and some even afraid. The air was thick with tension, as if the very walls of the shooting range were aware of the presence of someone extraordinary. Maya moved with her usual grace, silent steps that carried both calm and power. Every glance she cast was measured, every movement deliberate. She was a predator cloaked in normalcy. As she approached her lane, the man in black appeared again. This time, he did not walk casually. He strode with purpose, carrying not only binoculars but also a small notebook. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time slowed. The previous day had been a test. Today, it would be something more. His presence alone carried weight, a silent message that Maya could not ignore. She knew he had information, connections, and intent. This was no ordinary observer, he was part of something larger. Before Maya could respond, the young woman who had warned her earlier appeared again. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with concern. "They know who you are," she said urgently. "It's not just skill that attracts them. They've seen your past, and they want to test you. Be careful." Maya paused, absorbing the weight of the words. Her past was something she rarely revealed, something she guarded fiercely. Yet, now, it seemed that the very skills she had honed over years were being noticed by people she could not predict. Maya began her session quietly. Her gun felt familiar in her hands, every movement precise. She fired several rounds, each shot hitting exactly where she intended. The others in the range watched in awe and unease. But Maya was not merely practicing, she was signaling readiness. She knew that today, the tests she faced would not only measure skill, they would measure survival, composure, and wit. As she reloaded, a sudden sound cut through the air, a sharp click from the far end of the range. It was deliberate, slow, and measured, the sound of someone checking a high-powered rifle. Maya froze for a heartbeat. Her instinct screamed that this was no accident. She subtly adjusted her stance, her eyes flicking to the origin of the sound. The man in black had positioned himself strategically, observing, calculating. But Maya noticed another presence, hidden in the shadows near the tree line. Someone else had arrived, someone intent on pushing her limits. The tension was palpable. Blake, who had been observing from a distance, fidgeted nervously. He had begun to respect Maya's skills, but he had no understanding of the danger now looming. The other regular shooters whispered among themselves, their previous amusement replaced with fear and awe. Maya remained calm, silent, her mind analyzing, predicting, and preparing. Each shot she fired, each movement she made, was deliberate, a message, a signal, a test of control. Then the man in black finally spoke, his voice calm but authoritative. "You have skill, precision, and control. But skill alone is not enough. The real world tests more than aim, it tests judgment, patience, and instinct. Are you ready to face what comes next?" Maya's eyes met his. Her calm demeanor did not waver. She nodded slightly, understanding both the challenge and the warning. The stakes were no longer simply about accuracy, they were about survival, strategy, and the quiet power that she had carried for so long. Suddenly, from the tree-line, a figure emerged. Cloaked in dark clothing and moving with fluid precision, the newcomer approached the range quietly, almost as if they had been trained to move unseen. Maya's gaze tracked the movement, every muscle in her body alert yet relaxed. She did not raise her gun immediately. She did not panic. Instead, she observed, analyzing the figure's approach, predicting intentions. Every step, every gesture, was a clue, and she intended to read them perfectly. The figure stopped just short of the range, eyes locked on Maya. A subtle challenge radiated from the stance, a silent provocation. Maya slowly raised her gun, her breathing steady, movements smooth. The atmosphere around her seemed to thrum with tension. The others in the range could feel it too. They whispered nervously, unsure whether this was a show, a test, or a threat. Maya knew the answer. This was a test, yes, but one with far higher stakes than any she had faced before. The newcomer made the first move, producing a small, sophisticated target device. It was not just a paper target, it was a challenge, a complex setup requiring focus, speed, and precision under intense scrutiny. Maya observed calmly. Every detail mattered. She analyzed the device, the distance, the angles, the weight of her gun, and the subtle cues in the wind and light. Then, with steady hands, she fired. Each shot was perfect. The device responded exactly as intended, triggering a series of mechanical reactions that drew impressed and fearful gasps from the onlookers. The man in black nodded once, subtle but significant. Maya's skill had passed this test, yet she knew it was only the beginning. The newcomer in the shadows made a slight movement, signaling that the stakes were far from over. Maya's mind raced, not with panic but with strategic calculations. Every outcome, every contingency, was being assessed, and she prepared herself silently for whatever would come next. Blake, watching from the sidelines, whispered under his breath, She's not human." Others nodded, their previous judgment replaced with respect and fear. Maya's calm, controlled demeanor combined with her deadly precision created a growing tension in the range. It was no longer about competition, it was about understanding the woman who had entered quietly but left an indelible mark on everyone present. As the session drew to a close, Maya cleaned her gun and collected her belongings. Her calm movements masked the awareness of danger that now surrounded her. She had passed today's test, demonstrated her skill, and sent a quiet but powerful message: she was ready. But the shadows lurking just beyond the range remained, observing, calculating, waiting for the right moment to challenge her again. When Maya stepped outside, the morning sun had shifted higher in the sky, casting a golden glow over the city. She paused for a moment, adjusting her jacket and scanning the area. The man in black watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. Somewhere beyond the trees, the shadowy figure still lingered, the promise of future tests hanging in the air. Maya's calm eyes reflected determination. She understood that this was only the beginning, the real challenges, the threats, and the revelations about her past were yet to come. With deliberate steps, she walked away from the range. The echoes of her presence lingered, leaving those who had witnessed her in awe and a touch of fear. She knew the coming days would test her not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Her past, long kept secret, would soon resurface, demanding answers and action. Maya's journey was far from over, and the suspense surrounding her skills, her history, and the dangers she faced was only growing. As the city hummed quietly around her, Maya felt the familiar sense of anticipation that always accompanied challenges. She had proven her skill, navigated observation, and remained calm under pressure. But the quiet threats and unseen observers reminded her that her greatest test was not yet here. The shadows of the past, the challenges of the present, and the unknown dangers of the future were converging. Maya walked forward with silent confidence, ready for the unfolding story, aware that every step brought her closer to the revelations and trials that would define her truly. The next day, the air was heavy with tension before Maya even arrived at the shooting range. She sensed it immediately, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that told her someone had planned more than just observation this time. The usual morning calm was gone, replaced with an almost electric anticipation. Every step she took toward the range was deliberate, measured, her eyes scanning for movement, for signs, for danger. She knew she was no longer just practicing or proving her skill, she was entering a game with higher stakes, one she could not predict fully. The range was almost empty when she arrived. Only Blake and the young woman who had warned her yesterday were present. But Maya could feel the unseen eyes, the quiet observation from outside. She paused at the entrance, adjusting her jacket and taking a deep breath. Every detail mattered. Even the smallest sound, the faintest shadow, could signal the arrival of a threat. Maya's calm demeanor gave nothing away, yet her senses were alert, trained to notice what others could not. As she set her equipment down, the man in black appeared again. This time, there was no notebook or casual observation, he carried a small device that emitted a low hum. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. She had seen technology like this before, in her past missions and training, and she understood its purpose, a sophisticated sensor to track precision, timing, and stress levels. It was a test, not just of skill but of composure under pressure. The man placed it on a table near the center of the range and nodded once at her. "Let's see what you're capable of," he said quietly. His tone left no room for misunderstanding. Maya's focus sharpened. She checked her gun, her hands steady and calm. Every movement was precise. She knew the test was not just about hitting targets, it was about maintaining her composure under scrutiny, under threat, under invisible eyes that calculated every heartbeat. She raised her gun and fired. Each shot struck its mark perfectly, as expected. The device hummed softly, recording and measuring. The man in black observed silently, his expression unreadable, but Maya could feel the weight of his evaluation. Suddenly, a sharp sound erupted from the far tree line. A shot fired, not from Maya, not from the usual lanes. Everyone froze. Blake instinctively ducked behind cover, but Maya remained standing, her movements controlled and deliberate. She could feel the danger immediately, recognize it instinctively. Someone had approached the range with intent to provoke, to test, perhaps to harm. Her calm exterior masked the rapid calculation happening in her mind, location of the shooter, possible angles, potential targets, and escape routes. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Unlike the others, this one carried no notebook, no benign devices, only a rifle and a confident, predatory stance. Maya's eyes narrowed. This was no casual competitor. This was a threat. The quiet, deliberate approach of the figure made it clear that the challenge had escalated from observation to confrontation. Maya adjusted her stance, her hands steady, her breathing slow and controlled. Every motion was calculated. She did not panic. She had been trained for moments like this. Blake stammered nervously behind her. "Maya, what do we do?" Maya glanced briefly at him. "Watch and learn," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, yet carried an authority that demanded attention. She raised her gun, eyes locking on the figure's movement. She did not aim recklessly. She did not fire without purpose. Instead, she used her training, her instincts, and her experience to anticipate the threat's actions. Each second felt stretched, elongated by the intensity of the moment. The figure fired again, a warning shot that shattered the tense silence of the morning. Maya reacted instinctively. A small, precise movement of her body, a controlled shift of her stance, and the bullet missed her by inches. She returned fire, not to harm, but to signal precision and skill. Each shot was deliberate, landing exactly where it should, demonstrating her control without recklessness. The man in black watched silently, taking mental notes, impressed by her calmness under real pressure. The atmosphere thickened. Every observer, even from a distance, could feel the suspense, the tension of life and death training disguised as a challenge. Maya moved like a shadow, deliberate, calculated, yet fluid. Each step, each adjustment, each shot was a message. She was not to be underestimated. The shadowy figure advanced again, testing her, gauging her skill, trying to force a mistake. But Maya was unshakable. Her calm and deadly precision had already established a silent dominance over the range. Then, without warning, a distraction occurred. A mechanical device, hidden earlier, activated near the edge of the treeline, a decoy designed to divide her attention. Maya's instinct screamed, but her mind remained calm. She evaluated the threat, determined that it was harmless yet designed to confuse. With perfect timing, she neutralized the distraction by precise placement of a shot, proving once again that her focus and skill were unparalleled. Blake and the other observers could only gape, awed and fearful. The shadowy figure finally revealed himself fully, stepping into the open, rifle lowered slightly but eyes locked on Maya. A tense silence fell over the range. There was no mockery, no casual whispers, only the sharp, focused tension of predator and skilled opponents sizing each other up. Maya's mind raced calmly, calculating angles, distances, trajectories. Every muscle in her body was engaged, but outwardly she was still, controlled, unyielding. She had been underestimated before, mocked even, but now she faced a threat that demanded all of her skill and discipline. The man in black finally spoke again, his voice cutting through the tension. "This is your first true test," he said. "Not just of aim, but of control, strategy, and instinct. Survive this, and you will earn more than respect, you will earn understanding." Maya's eyes met his, and a small, almost imperceptible nod acknowledged her comprehension. She did not speak. Her calm demeanor said more than words ever could. The stakes were clear, this was no longer practice, no longer competition. This was a measure of her readiness for challenges far greater than anyone could predict. As the shadowy figure raised his rifle, Maya adjusted her stance one last time, centering herself completely. Her breathing was slow, controlled, her finger on the trigger ready but not yet firing. She was preparing for the moment of truth, the engagement that would define her skill, her precision, and her ability to remain calm under deadly pressure. Every second stretched into eternity, filled with suspense, anticipation, and quiet calculation. The first real confrontation had begun. Shots rang out, precise, controlled, deliberate. Maya's movements were a dance of skill and strategy, each action measured, every decision critical. Observers could feel the tension rise, hearts racing as they watched a woman who had been mocked for her quiet nature now face a true test that few could imagine. Every shot she fired, every step she took, reinforced one undeniable fact: she was not only skilled, she was deadly, disciplined, and unshakable under pressure. By the end of the session, the shadowy figure had retreated slightly, acknowledging her skill silently. Maya remained calm, standing perfectly still, gun lowered but eyes scanning the area. She had passed the first real test, survived the confrontation, and demonstrated that her precision and calmness were unmatched. The man in black approached, his expression unreadable but his eyes reflecting respect. "Well done," he said quietly. "You are ready for more." Maya nodded, understanding that the first challenge of many had been met, but far greater tests awaited, ones that would demand not only skill but courage, strategy, and the secrets of her past. As she left the range, the tension in the air lingered. Observers whispered in awe, Blake stared silently, and the shadowy figure watched from afar, calculating, waiting. Maya walked away calmly, her steps deliberate, her mind already moving ahead to the challenges she would face. She had survived confrontation, demonstrated lethal skill under pressure, and left a mark on all who witnessed her. But the suspense was far from over. The shadows of her past, the tests ahead, and the hidden dangers waiting in the wings promised that the story of the quiet, deadly sniper was only beginning. The city was quiet that evening, but Maya's mind was far from still. She knew the events at the range were no longer just tests, they were warnings. Every movement she had made, every shot fired, had drawn attention from people who understood skill, precision, and danger in ways ordinary observers never could. The shadowy figure from the previous day had disappeared, but his presence lingered in her thoughts. Someone was coming for her, and it was only a matter of time before the past she had long hidden would catch up. Maya returned to her small apartment, a simple place with minimal furnishings. It was orderly, neat, and calm, much like her demeanor. But inside, her mind raced. She opened a small, locked drawer and pulled out a folded photograph and a faded medal. They were remnants of a life she had kept buried, years of sniper training, covert missions, and experiences that had shaped her into the deadly precision she now displayed. Few could imagine that the quiet woman who walked unnoticed in public had once been part of operations where a single misstep could mean life or death. Her phone buzzed, pulling her back to the present. A message appeared on the screen, an anonymous text with a single sentence, "We know who you are. Your past is coming for you." Maya's fingers tightened around the device for a moment. She had anticipated this, prepared for this, yet it was still a reminder that her life of quiet anonymity was over. Her calm exterior never faltered, but inside, her thoughts moved faster than ever. She knew the next challenge would not be a simple confrontation, it would test her skill, her mind, and her ability to stay alive. The next morning, she returned to the range. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby trees. The man in black appeared again, his presence commanding, his eyes assessing her silently. Maya nodded, acknowledging him without words. Today, however, there was an added presence, a new antagonist, a woman dressed in tactical gear, moving with the same confidence and precision Maya had seen in soldiers, snipers, and operatives before. She exuded calm danger, and her eyes locked on Maya as though they recognized an equal. Maya's heart remained steady. She had faced observation, confrontation, and challenge, but this was different. The woman before her was not a competitor, she was a threat, a mirror of skill and deadly intent. The other shooters present instinctively backed away, sensing the tension, unsure if they should remain or flee. Maya remained calm, adjusting her stance and scanning the area, taking note of every shadow, every subtle movement, every angle. She understood immediately that this encounter was about more than skill, it was about strategy, instinct, and survival. The antagonist spoke first, her voice calm, almost chilling. "You've hidden well," she said. "But the skills you display cannot remain unnoticed forever. We've been watching." Maya's eyes narrowed, taking in her tone, the precision in her movements, the deliberate way she held herself. The words were not empty, they carried weight, history, and intent. Maya's mind raced through possibilities, analyzing the woman's approach, estimating her skill level, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The man in black stepped back, observing quietly. Maya and her new adversary were alone in their silent battlefield. The tension was palpable, thick in the air like fog. Every observer could feel it, even at a distance. The shooting range had transformed from a place of practice into a stage for an unspoken war, a test of skill, calm, and instinct. Maya did not speak, did not move hastily. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, and her eyes locked on the movements of the new opponent. The first move came subtly. The antagonist raised her weapon, aiming carefully, testing Maya's reaction. Maya's eyes tracked the motion, reading not just the action but the intent behind it. With a subtle shift, she adjusted her stance, her fingers tightening around her gun. The first shot fired, precise, controlled, deliberate. The other woman's eyes widened slightly, impressed, acknowledging silently that Maya was no ordinary opponent. The battle was not loud, not chaotic, it was quiet, tense, and filled with deadly anticipation. Each shot was a dialogue. Maya's precision was a message, she was calm, experienced, and deadly. The antagonist responded with equal skill, a mirror of precision and calculation. They moved in a careful dance, bullets striking targets, distances measured, angles calculated. Every observer could feel the suspense growing, hearts pounding with each precise shot. Maya's mind, trained in past operations, calculated every trajectory, every potential outcome, every movement the opponent could make. The tension in the air was suffocating, yet electrifying. The man in black finally spoke quietly, as though to himself, "This is the real test." Maya did not need the words, she felt it. This was not about showing skill. This was about proving herself against someone who understood danger, precision, and control in ways that ordinary shooters could never comprehend. She had faced challenges before, but this confrontation was different. It required everything she had learned, every instinct honed, every memory of missions past. Time seemed to stretch. The two women fired again and again, precision and calm dominating the encounter. Observers whispered nervously, realizing that they were witnessing something beyond competition. Maya's movements were fluid, calculated, almost graceful despite the deadly context. The other woman's skill matched hers in many ways, but Maya's calm under pressure, her strategic mind, and her ability to anticipate made her stand out. She was not just reacting, she was predicting, controlling, and dominating the flow of the engagement. Finally, after a tense series of precise shots, the antagonist lowered her weapon slightly. Her eyes acknowledged Maya's skill without a word. The unspoken message was clear, she recognized Maya as equal, or perhaps superior, in calmness and precision. The man in black nodded subtly, signaling that the lesson of the confrontation had been delivered. Maya remained calm, breathing evenly, lowering her weapon in perfect control. She had survived the test, proven her skill, and demonstrated her dominance without raising her voice or losing composure. As the session ended, the other shooters and observers remained silent, mixed with fear. Maya collected her belongings, her movements deliberate and precise. She glanced at the antagonist, who disappeared into the shadows as quietly as she had appeared. The man in black approached Maya, his eyes unreadable. "You are ready," he said softly. "But readiness is only the beginning. The past you carry is not just skill, it is danger. And danger will always find you." Maya nodded slightly, her calm exterior unbroken. Inside, she knew he spoke the truth. Her past, the training, the missions, the skills she had honed in secrecy, were all part of a life that now demanded attention. She had survived confrontation after confrontation, each one testing her skill, her calm, her precision, but the real threats were still ahead. Someone, somewhere, was waiting for the moment to truly challenge her, to test her limits beyond what anyone at the range could imagine. As she left the shooting range that evening, the fading light casting long shadows across the empty lanes, Maya's mind was already moving forward. She had survived observation, confrontation, and a real test against an equally skilled opponent. But she understood that this was only the beginning. The hidden threats, the secrets of her past, and the dangerous challenges ahead demanded not just skill, but strategy, patience, and courage. She walked into the quiet city streets with deliberate steps, her calm demeanor masking a mind always calculating, always ready, and always aware. Maya's journey had entered a new phase. The quiet sniper who had once been mocked, dismissed, and underestimated had now proven her skill, her composure, and her lethal precision. But the story was far from over. Shadows waited, challenges loomed, and the past she had long hidden would soon collide with the present in ways that would test her beyond anything she had faced before. The suspense of what was coming next lingered in the air, a promise of danger, revelation, and the quiet strength of a woman who was deadly, disciplined, and unstoppable. The night was unusually still, the city wrapped in darkness except for the occasional flicker of streetlights. Maya walked carefully along the quiet streets, her senses alert. She had survived challenges, tests, and warnings, but tonight felt different. There was an unspoken tension in the air, a weight that pressed on her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Every step she took was measured, deliberate, as if she could feel eyes watching her from hidden corners, waiting for a mistake. Her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. A message appeared, "Tonight, you face the real test." No name, no explanation, just the words that made her heart tighten with anticipation. Maya had anticipated challenges before, but this was no casual test or range practice. This was personal, deliberate, and dangerous. She glanced around the deserted street, noting every shadow, every flicker of movement. Calm as she appeared, her mind was calculating every possible scenario, every exit, every way to stay ahead. As she approached her apartment building, a subtle sound caught her attention, a faint rustle behind a dumpster nearby. She stopped, her breathing steady, eyes scanning. Two figures emerged, moving with precision and intent. One was the shadowy figure she had faced before at the range, now closer and more threatening. The other was new, silent, and deadly, dressed in tactical black, carrying a rifle. Maya's instinct screamed danger, yet she did not panic. Her hand subtly rested on the small firearm she carried concealed beneath her jacket. She had trained for moments like this, moments where calmness and speed could make the difference between life and death. The figures approached silently, their movements calculated, but Maya was faster. With one smooth motion, she slipped behind a parked car, assessing their distance and movement. She could hear their quiet conversation, their whispers barely audible. "She's here," the first one said. "Ready?" The other nodded, checking the scope of the rifle. Maya knew she had mere seconds to act before they closed the gap. With deliberate precision, she raised her gun and fired a warning shot that shattered the tense silence of the street. The sound echoed through the alleyways, startling the attackers. One froze, the other ducked instinctively, giving Maya the advantage. She moved swiftly, keeping low, her training allowing her to navigate the urban terrain with fluidity. Her goal was not confrontation yet, it was to observe, anticipate, and survive. Every movement she made was calculated to protect herself while sending a clear message: she was not an easy target. The attackers regrouped quickly, moving toward her with cautious precision. Maya's mind raced. She knew they were skilled, trained to hunt, to track, to eliminate. But she had faced danger before, survived impossible situations, and her calm under pressure was unmatched. She used shadows, her surroundings, and the element of surprise to stay one step ahead. Every footstep, every breath, every subtle movement of her attackers was logged in her mind and calculated for her response. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Not from Maya, but from the figure in tactical black aiming at her. Maya rolled to the side instinctively, bullets ricocheting near her position. She fired back with precise aim, striking the weapon hand of one attacker. He stumbled, giving her a small window to move. The chase began in earnest, through narrow alleys, over fences, across rooftops. Maya's calm and calculated movements contrasted sharply with the desperate, tense motions of her pursuers. During the pursuit, Maya's mind pieced together the significance of the attack. These were not random threats. They were organized, trained, and deliberate. Someone had orchestrated this to test her limits, to force her into a life-threatening situation. She realized that her past, the missions, the training, the deadly skill, had attracted enemies who would not hesitate to exploit any vulnerability. The calm sniper who had once been mocked was now a target, and survival depended on skill, strategy, and awareness. She reached a narrow rooftop overlooking a dimly lit street. The attackers were below, communicating silently, trying to corner her. Maya paused for a moment, assessing angles, wind, distance, and trajectory. Every instinct honed over years of covert training kicked in. She fired a precise shot, disarming one attacker by hitting a tactical device he carried. The other froze, startled by her accuracy and composure. Maya's calm demeanor masked the storm of calculations happening in her mind. The first attacker recovered and fired, but Maya was already moving. She used rooftops, shadows, and quick, precise movements to stay ahead. The city became her arena, every rooftop, alley, and street a tool in her strategy. She was not reckless, she was calculating, anticipating every move, predicting every reaction. The suspense was electric, not just for her, but for anyone who might be observing. Maya had turned a dangerous encounter into a display of deadly skill and calm dominance. Finally, she reached a secluded building, entering silently through a fire exit. The attackers stopped at the edge of the street, frustrated, realizing they had been outmaneuvered. Maya paused inside, her breathing steady, eyes scanning the environment. She had survived the encounter, demonstrated lethal precision under pressure, and proved that she could handle threats far beyond what anyone at the range could imagine. The real test, however, was only beginning. The people who sent these attackers would not give up easily. Back inside, Maya removed her jacket, revealing the calm confidence that defined her. She had faced danger, anticipated movements, and survived with precision and strategy. Yet she knew this was not the end. The man in black, the shadowy figure, and the new adversaries were part of a larger plan, a test that would escalate further. Her past had returned to challenge her in ways that demanded more than skill. It demanded courage, strategy, and the deadly calm she carried like a weapon. Maya's phone buzzed again. Another message: you passed the first test tonight. The real challenge is coming. She read the words, and her lips curved slightly, not in fear, but in understanding. She knew the stakes were higher now, that survival required not just skill but awareness, patience, and adaptability. The quiet, deadly sniper who had once been underestimated now faced an opponent, or opponents, who would push her limits to the extreme. As she gazed out the window at the city lights, Maya allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She had survived, demonstrated skill under pressure, and outmaneuvered trained attackers. But she also understood the warning in the message. The real challenge was coming, one that would test not only her deadly skill but her mind, strategy, and perhaps even her morality. The suspense hung in the air like a tangible weight, a promise of danger, revelation, and the relentless test of the quiet sniper's abilities. Tonight, she had survived. Tomorrow, the stakes would rise. Maya adjusted her jacket, checked her equipment, and allowed herself a final, calm breath. She was ready. The shadows of her past, the enemies who now knew her skill, and the challenges ahead awaited her, but she would meet them with the same lethal precision, calm, and strategy that had always defined her. The city remained quiet, unaware of the deadly presence walking its streets. Maya disappeared into the night, every step deliberate, every movement calculated. The suspense of the next confrontation, the coming revelations, and the true test of her skills loomed just ahead. The quiet sniper was no longer underestimated, and the audience of the world, if they knew, would be holding their breath for what came next. The city's first light began to creep over the skyline, painting the streets in shades of gray and gold. Maya stood on a rooftop overlooking an abandoned warehouse district, her eyes scanning the horizon with calm precision. She had survived attacks, tests, and threats, but today felt different. The messages, the shadowy figures, the confrontations, they all led here. The man in black and the new adversary had orchestrated this ultimate challenge. The final confrontation was coming, and Maya knew that only complete focus, skill, and strategy would see her through. She descended silently into the maze of alleys and abandoned buildings, every movement deliberate. Her heart beat steadily, her mind calm but alert. She was prepared for anything: traps, ambushes, deception. Every step had been anticipated, every potential danger considered. Maya's past had trained her for moments like this, life or death scenarios where one misstep could mean the end. Her calm exterior masked the storm of calculations running in her mind, but it was precisely this calm that gave her the advantage. Inside the largest warehouse, the man in black stood waiting, flanked by the shadowy adversary from the range and several others Maya had not yet seen. They had been planning this for days, waiting for her to reach this point. Maya's eyes flicked across the space, taking in positions, potential escape routes, and vantage points. She noticed traps, wires, strategically placed objects, and subtle hints of ambush. She did not panic. Instead, she used the knowledge of her environment to turn it to her advantage. The man in black spoke first, his voice low, calm, and deliberate. "You've proven skill, precision, and calm under pressure. But now, Maya, you face the full measure of your past and the people who know it. Survive this, and you will have earned more than respect, you will have earned understanding." Maya's gaze never wavered. She knew what he meant. Her past, her training, her missions, and the deadly skills she carried were all part of a world most could not comprehend. Now, they were being tested, challenged, and pushed to the limit. Without warning, the shadowy adversary fired a shot that shattered the quiet. Maya rolled to cover instinctively, firing back with precise accuracy. The engagement escalated immediately, bullets flying with calculated precision. Maya moved with fluid grace, using shadows, cover, and timing to her advantage. Every step, every breath, every shot was deliberate. She had survived countless tests before, but this was the ultimate challenge, the orchestration of her past and present into one deadly trial. The man in black remained at a distance, observing, calculating. Maya knew he was testing her more than her skill. He was evaluating her judgment, her strategy, and her ability to survive against multiple opponents. She ducked behind a stack of crates, scanning for openings, predicting enemy movements. The warehouse became a deadly chessboard, each move critical, each reaction vital. Her training in covert operations, sniper tactics, and urban combat merged seamlessly with her calm instinctual decisions. One of the new attackers lunged from behind a support beam. Maya anticipated it perfectly, spinning with precise timing to fire a non-lethal shot that incapacitated him instantly. The others reacted quickly, but Maya's calm and lethal precision kept her ahead. She was not just fighting, they were learning, experiencing firsthand the silent, deadly presence of someone who had mastered both mind and weapon. Every shot she fired, every calculated movement, reinforced her dominance in the encounter. The shadowy adversary from the range advanced toward her directly. Their eyes locked, recognition passing between them, two equally skilled, deadly individuals testing each other's limits. Shots rang out, echoing through the warehouse. Maya's movements were fluid, controlled, almost graceful. She predicted each shot, each angle, each maneuver, countering with precision. The suspense was almost tangible, a thick tension that hung in the air like a storm about to break. Finally, she found an opening. A small gap in the attacker's coordination allowed her to move rapidly, securing a higher vantage point. From there, she fired with absolute precision, disabling key threats without unnecessary risk. The shadowy adversary paused, acknowledging Maya's skill silently. Maya's calm demeanor, lethal precision, and strategic brilliance had turned the tide. The man in black nodded subtly, impressed by her mastery under the highest pressure. With the immediate threats neutralized, Maya confronted the shadowy adversary directly. Words were unnecessary, the duel of skills had spoken louder than anything else. She was calm, focused, and unyielding. The other woman recognized the truth. Maya's experience, her past missions, her discipline, and her instinctive precision made her a formidable opponent. A silent truce passed between them, a mutual acknowledgement of respect for lethal skill honed under pressure. The man in black stepped forward, his expression finally revealing the faintest trace of approval. "You have faced observation, tests, and threats," he said quietly. "You have proven that skill alone is not enough. You possess judgment, strategy, and composure. The world you come from demands this. And now, Maya, you are recognized." Maya remained calm, letting his words sink in. Her past, once hidden, had been tested, challenged, and finally acknowledged. As she left the warehouse, the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the streets. Maya moved silently, every step deliberate, every motion controlled. She had faced life-threatening challenges, unseen observers, deadly tests, and her own past, and emerged victorious. Her calm precision had turned potential danger into mastery, fear into respect. She was no longer the quiet woman mocked at the range, she was a deadly sniper, acknowledged by those who understood the full measure of her skill. The city outside was waking, unaware of the deadly events that had unfolded in the shadows. Maya disappeared into the morning light, calm, controlled, and unshakable. Her journey had reached a climax, yet she knew her path was ongoing. The lessons learned, the challenges faced, and the respect earned had transformed her, but the suspense, the danger, and the hidden threats of her world would always demand vigilance, precision, and calm strength. As she looked out over the city skyline, Maya allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had faced the ultimate test, revealed the depth of her skill, and confronted the dangers of her past. She had survived with precision, calm, and strategic brilliance. And though the world might never fully know the extent of her abilities, those who had tested her now understood one undeniable truth: the quiet, lethal sniper was unstoppable, disciplined, and unmatched. The story of the woman once mocked, now proven deadly and respected, ended not with noise, but with calm authority. Maya walked into the streets, the suspense of her next challenge already lingering in the quiet, a promise that while today she had triumphed, her vigilance, skill, and deadly precision would always define her path forward.